Good morning. It's actually been a while since I downloaded something up on YouTube, but something came across my desk the other day that I wanted to take just a moment to share with you because uh, it's a shame that uh, we have this doctrine going on in Baptist churches. Uh, what I got was a new video. I'm not sure how new it is. I know that we just received it at the church. It's called After the Tribulation. Received it, of course, on DVD, and immediately looked at the back and saw who was involved in it, Steve Anderson and Ken Hovind being involved in it. So immediately I grabbed it and looked at it and said what it had to say on the back, and immediately grabbed it and made sure nobody else in the church got their hands on it. And in fact, preaching through Revelation currently in the church, um, I told the congregation of Emmanuel Baptist Church last Sunday, if they see this in the bookstores, not to buy them because it is not biblically accurate, and it is a shame that these type of things are being relayed in the church, but particularly in a Baptist church. So I'm actually preparing for tomorrow, but wanted to take a few moments to address just a couple of things that were talked about in that video. Uh, One of the things that they said was in the first part of the video is that it wasn't until the late 1800s that the pre-trib rapture theory actually came into being. Now, just so those of you who are not understanding my language, because I have a pretty wide viewing audience, um, pre-trib rapture theory basically teaches that the church will be delivered from the wrath to come, that the church will be raptured prior to any part of the tribulation. The mid-trib rapture theory is one that's not is put forth today like it used to be. It basically says that the church will be raptured middle way through the tribulation, obviously, and then post-trib is raptured out of the tribulation. Um, Marvin Rosenthal wrote a book some years ago called The Pre-Wrath Rapture of the Church, and where he basically took a mid-trib position on that. Um, but one of the things that they said was in the video, one of the first things, and I wish that I could show it to you, but I don't want to show it to you. But one of the things that they said was is that the pre-trib rapture theory was not even taught until the late 1800s. That none of the church fathers taught it. None of the apostles taught it. The word pre-trib rapture doesn't appear in the scripture. Let me just address a couple of those things. First of all, when you want to bring up the church fathers, and I have all of their books, you don't see them behind me because I have them on my computer, but I have the entire works of the early church fathers. And one of the things you need to understand about the early church fathers is that they only addressed key issues that were going on at the time. They were more concerned about um, battling things regarding transubstantiation and Marianism and the deity of Jesus Christ. I mean, these Athanasius, for example, was battling the Arian controversy, in which the Arians were denying the deity of Jesus Christ, and Athanasius spent years of his life. He was, in fact, the bishop of Alexandria in Egypt, and he spent years of his life battling for the deity of Christ. And these guys fought these battles: the deity of Christ, transubstantiation, wherein the Catholic system, the church system, where when the priest has mass, that he actually brings Jesus Christ down from heaven and actually crucifies him again on the Roman altar, and the blood and the wine and the bread actually become the actual literal body and blood of Christ again. They were battling those issues. They were not battling the issue of when the tribulation was going to happen or when the rapture was going to happen. They weren't battling those issues. And so, no, you don't look at the church fathers and see some clear evidences where they were defending a pre-trib rapture theory, because that wasn't the focus of their battle. That was not what they were engaged in. They were engaged in the things that I just mentioned. They were not engaged in those things, and so they fought those battles. And it wasn't until around 1902 before our own belief, the church's own belief on the doctrine of the rapture of the church actually became into question. And so that's why since then it's been ardently defended by people. And so their claim in that video that, well, the preacher of rapture can't be true because no church father ever talked about it. No apostle ever talked about it. The word pre-tribulational rapture doesn't appear in the Bible. Well, sir, neither does the word Trinity. The word rapture doesn't appear in the Bible, but that doesn't deny the fact that those two things are not true. And so to say, well, because the word pre-tribulation rapture doesn't appear in the Bible, well, then it can't be true. It's just bogus. It's just bogus. And so they had a couple of verses. Again, I just want to take a moment of your time to discuss this with you. The biggest verse that they go to, the passage that they like to go to, is of course Matthew 24. And in Matthew 24, reading from verse 29, immediately after the tribulation of those days, and they really focus on that key phrase, immediately after the tribulation of those days. Shall the sun be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light, and the stars shall fall from heaven, and the power of the heavens shall be shaken. Then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven, and then shall all the tribes of the earth mourn, and they shall see the face of the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. Now, I'm not sure. Well, let me read you verse 31. And he shall send his angels with the great sound of a trumpet, and they shall gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of the earth, heaven, to the other. Now, what they do in this video is they like to liken the wording that is used here in Matthew 24 to the wording that is used in 1 Thessalonians 4. 1 Thessalonians 4 is very obviously a rapture passage. I mean, it talks about what's being caught up together with him in the clouds. It has all that language. And they would agree with you in this video that 1 Thessalonians 4, beginning verse 13, is actually talking about the rapture. And of course, I would agree with that as well. But interestingly, the word rapture doesn't appear there, but they say that it's the rapture. You see, it's the old double standard. You know, they do not hold themselves to the same standard that they hold you. Okay, the pre-tribulational rapture theory can't be biblical because the word pre-tribulation doesn't appear in the Bible, but the rapture is true even though the word rapture doesn't appear. So the same standards by which they hold you, they don't hold themselves. So, but that's generally the way that it is with these type of guys. And so they like to take the language that's in Matthew 24 and 1 Thessalonians 4 and liken them as the same event. For example, in verse 31 of Matthew 24, it talks about coming with the sound of a trumpet. Well, in 1 Thessalonians 4, it talks about the rapture that Jesus Christ comes with the trumpet. Talks about shall become with the clouds of the air. Well, in 1 Thessalonians 4, they say that Jesus coming will meet him in the clouds. And so what they like to say is, well, look at this language. If this is not parallel passage, I don't know what is. And what they're in essence saying is that the passages in Matthew 24 are the rapture, just like the passage in 1 Thessalonians 4. And then they say, since we know that the language here is the same, therefore in Matthew 24 talking about a rapture, go back to verse 29, immediately after the tribulation. And so they say what's going to happen, after the tribulation is the rapture. And then they said, now we ought to be able to close our Bibles and just go home. This is, in fact, Steve Anderson says he's a very condescending type of guy. If you've ever had the displeasure of hearing him speak, he's a very condescending gentleman. He's about, if you can believe this, and I got some gray coming, so if you can believe it, he's about 15 years my junior. He's a very condescending type of guy, and I can only say, Father, I pray I did not sound like that when I was 31 years old. But anyway, he says, now, what part of after do you not understand? And that's the type of wording and type of attitude that is really put forth throughout this entire video. But getting back to this, they basically say that because this is the rapture of Matthew 24, verse 29, immediately after the tribulation of those days, so it's got to be the tribulation. This has got to be the rapture. Well, not necessarily, and not at all. Because if you understand the doctrine of the rapture, and That's really not really a good phrase, but I'm using it that way because in our list of doctrines, there's no doctrine of the rapture. It's a doctrine of eschatology. But if you understand the thoughts behind the rapture, okay, you understand that in the rapture, what is a key element of the rapture? Jesus doesn't touch the earth. Jesus doesn't come with great power and glory. The nations of the earth do not see Christ. But this is what Jesus told his disciples happened in Matthew 24. The nations of the earth mourn because they see him. He comes with power, verse 29. He comes with power and great glory, which is not a characteristic of the rapture. He does not come with power and great glory until his second coming. So what am I saying? I am saying that Matthew 24 is a second coming passage, not a rapture passage. And we all understand that, yes, immediately after the tribulation comes the second coming. But when Jesus comes in the rapture, he doesn't come with power and great glory. He doesn't come and the nations fearing him and dreading his coming. That's not the nations of the earth don't even see him when he comes at the rapture. But they do see him when he comes at the second coming. So Matthew 24 is a second coming passage, not a rapture passage. And so Mr. Anderson and Mr. Hovind cannot use this passage as a proof text for the rapture, because I'm sorry, gentlemen, the context just does not follow you. You cannot, in true context of this passage, say that these two verses teach that this is the rapture. And then they say, well, what about the trumpets? Well, the Jews use trumpets all the time to introduce important events. I don't have a problem at all believing that at the second coming of Christ, trumpets don't blow. And so just because you have trumpets here and you have trumpets in 1 Thessalonians 4, doesn't mean this is the rapture, because it is very clear from the other language here that we are not talking about the rapture here. We are talking about the second coming of Jesus Christ. Because again, keep in mind, when Jesus Christ comes in the rapture, he does not touch the earth. He doesn't touch the earth. Zechariah 3 says, until the second coming, and he touches the Mount of Olives, and the Mount of Olives split in two. That's coming in power and great glory. So keep in mind that during the rapture, he does not come with power and great glory. He does not come to where the nations of the earth mourn him. They don't even see him. He comes with power and great glory so that the nations mourn him at the time of the second coming.